Hello, good evening, and welcome to this week's Majority Show, coming live to you on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter as well. Glad to have you. The show we do the show every Wednesday night. I'm here with my co-hosts, Mary Devlin and Allan Sutherland.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hi, how you doing?
And Allan is come all the way from Scotland Matters, who we are friendly with. What have you got for us tonight, Mary?
Well, tonight I'm going to be looking at the timing of the SNP's supposed increase in memberships.
Okay, very good. And Allan, what are you going to be looking at, talking about?
Well, basically, we've had a kind of rethink of what we're about to an extent based on what's been happening. So I'll talk a little bit about that if that's okay.
Okay, that of course. And we, aside from discussing the SNP's meltdown, after Lord Frost's intervention, should Holyrood powers be rolled back?
And as usual, I'll be handling all your comments, so please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many up on screen as I can.
And of course, we will have Zoomer of the Week. So all that and much more will be coming back to you in just a few seconds. Right, so welcome back. Glad to have you with us tonight. As you know, this is Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show, and we are here every Wednesday. So one of the things I wanted to say is we're still having a lot of trouble on our Majority Facebook page. We cannot access it at all. It's not because of any abuse or anything. We think we were hacked, and just the access is gone. To make matters worse, as you know, regular viewers will know we spent a lot of time trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so we could start to monetize the channel and get some extra tools. But perhaps due to the same hacking, we have had many problems with YouTube trying to accept our request to do that. And now the point is they've said that you can't do it at all. So it's extremely frustrating, but we hope that we will be able to get past that. And move on. So anyway, that's a little bit of our news. Huge thank you to everyone who has bought Abolish Holyrood t-shirts, and we have a mug and so on available. Where have we got? There's t-shirts there. It's a great thing, really well, nicely made, and they're flying off the virtual shelves. And also we have women's stuff and so on there. And I want to just put a little note out to say that today we actually put a nice article out as well, which is this one here, called After the Earthquake, a Tsunami. If you would like to go and have a read of that, it's a very good overview of the current state of the SNP as a wave of scandal, criminality and incompetence overwhelms them.
And we'd also like to say a huge thanks to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation's Facebook pages, where many of you will be watching from tonight.
Very good. All right, what have we also got here?
Well, wherever you are, please like, share and comment and tell your friends and extend your reach at the click of a button.
Very good, very good. Talking of friends, tonight we're joined by Allan Sutherland of Scotland Matters, who are well known for billboards and other kinds of activism. And we'll be talking to Allan a bit more about his efforts after we go for the news, which we will start in just a second. How about that? Okay. Right, so anyway, just to go on with it, the bad news continues for the SNP. In a meltdown that puts Chernobyl to shame, the SNP is collapsing under the weight of criminal investigations, financial challenges, and a complete loss of credibility. How things have changed from only a few weeks ago before Sturgeon resigned. Remember those sunny days? At that time, it was democracy denial, de facto referendums, and an October date with freedom. Now, like that smoking Russian ruin, the SNP are determined to make anything close to them radioactive.
Well, yeah, perhaps they'll cover it in concrete and make a 50-kilometre exclusion zone.
Well, indeed, certainly. In fact, there's so many issues, we don't know how we can get through them all out in 1 hour, but we will try with your help. Please do put your messages in the chat and so on. So we start with first item. Last Sunday, we had the big news that, here we go. Whoops, let me get that. SNP cops hunt for burner phones in this latest episode of CSI Uddingston. Actually, when we were up there at their house, which isn't far from where we live, Mary and I had a discussion about this, and we were talking about that they had so many police, perhaps because they were looking for some tiny items like SIM cards or so on. I mean, what did you think about that, Mary?
Well, I mean, they seem to be carting out, well, I don't know if it was hundreds, but it looked like it, perhaps plastic cases full of things like tea bags, biscuits, so they were looking for something small, I would say.
Right.
And
okay, yes.
I mean, you can imagine that a small thing would be, a SIM card or a burner phone or something like that. And of course, they were digging up the garden, etc.
Yes, well, it reminds me of an article I read not that long ago in the Daily Mail about these adorable army of special tech detection Labradors that are trained to find USB and SIM cards.
Let's see. Can we see a photo of that?
There
they are.
Yeah, it's very nice. That's like the one that walked past us the other day. Actually, oh no. Perhaps that was actually also looking for a SIM card that we had hidden about us. No, we don't indulge in such things like that. But Alan, I wonder if you had anything to say about how this, what you think about the investigation in general.
Well, it seems like they're actually seriously looking into things now. I'm not a police officer. I know people are in the police, and I think they seem to be doing it the right way. I wasn't following that stuff, the burner phone thing, because I was actually I was going looking at a camper van, the camper van for Colin I, so I was looking at that because we're going on holiday shortly. But to be serious, it's beginning to sound like everybody in SNP headquarters has been at it somehow or other, but I don't know, and I don't know what's the rules in terms of discussing cases, but yeah, they seem to be on the case now. And Nicola Sturgeon looked absolutely terrible last night, and I don't think it was an act. It wasn't a poor me act. I think she looked absolutely terrible on the television.
Yes, she came out. We'll come to that. I don't have that on. Right, well, let's have a look at how she came on here. Local video. Let's see what we got. Sturgeon back in Parliament. Let's see what she said.
Have you been questioned by the police?
No.
Do you expect to be questioned?
That's a matter. I'm not going to get into any aspect of the police investigation.
Have you ever had a burner phone? Have you ever had a burner phone?
No.
What is going on, First Minister? A lot of your supporters really want to know what is really happening at the moment.
Look, one of the frustrating things just now, and I'm not complaining about this, I understand the process that is underway, but one of the frustrating aspects of that is that I'm not able to give my version of what is going on just now. Hopefully the time will come when I can do that. So I appreciate the concern, I appreciate the frustration, but that is the nature of the process that is underway right now.
Well, it's quite interesting. I thought that when she said here, I'm not able to give my version of events, that was quite interesting phrasing, rather than saying, I'm not interested, I want to tell you the truth of what happened. Perhaps it's just phrasing, but I think she's quite careful of everything she says.
She did have some lawyer training.
Well, she's definitely careful about what she's saying there. So, sometimes you have to, thread your way through those type of what does it really mean things. Yeah, Mary, what are you saying?
No, I was just going to say that there seem to be, they seem to be drowning in denials, don't they? The SNP, everyone's like, I don't know anything, or
yes.
Basically, they're all acting like they were trained by Manuel on faulty towers. It's like, good. I know nothing.
Yes. Well, that Sturgeon's intervention there came after a very bad day for Colin Beattie, who was the treasurer of the SNP. And Colin didn't seem to know very much about the motorhome. Mary, do you know much about that?
Well, I saw what he said. He was denying that he knew anything. First of all, we see him on TV. He says he's denying anything about the camper van. He didn't know about it. which is really very strange because it's the only vehicle on that the SNP owns. It's the only one that's on their accounts, and there wasn't one there the year before. And he signed off the party's 2021 account. So it stands out, put it that way. But he seems to have not have asked any questions about that. But then 6 hours later, he comes back with a clarification to say he didn't know about the camper van when it was bought, but he did know about it in the 2021 accounts. So that would lead me to think that Peter Murrell, or let's assume it's Peter Murrell because it was parked in his mother's driveway, are spending money without any approval from the treasurer or without the treasurer knowing that money's being spent.
Or just keeping the treasurer completely
not keeping good records on where the money's gone.
Yes, it's quite a strange one, but I think the situation was so bad that that's when they pulled Sturgeon in and said, look, this is a bit of a disaster. It just feels like that because the same person, and you saw the woman in the background, can't remember what her name was, Sally Mason or something like that, she was pulled in to do damage control after the Beattie thing, and it seemed like that. My feeling anyway was that the newspapers the next day were full of headlines saying it's an injustice. It's so terrible for Sturgeon. That's basically all the papers had that, instead of having this front page of Colin Beattie, not knowing anything about what was going on as a treasurer. Alan, you anything to say about that?
I mean, I just think you've got to let it go. They're making fools of themselves. We don't know the real truth. And to me, the big job is to get this out in the open, and that'll be one of the elements of getting rid of the SNP. The biggest one will be an election, but really got to be, people have got to understand, if it's true, if they are guilty of this, people have got to accept it. And I don't have any sympathy for any of these SNP people that either kidding themselves on or kidding us on about what was going on.
Yeah,
I just hope it all comes out properly.
Well, it's either incompetence or it's ignorance, and you can't either way. It's a bad situation. Moving on from there, stories just get worse and worse. Now we've got this issue about the auditors here. Hamza Yousaf finding auditor to meet SNP accounts deadline will be challenging. That should be an inverted commas, big inverted commas, which we always talk about in the show. How big can they be? Because they were not going to be able to are they going to be able to find auditors, Mary, in your humble opinion?
Okay, well, in my very humble opinion, they have to find auditors by the May 31st deadline. I believe that's for the Westminster accounts.
Yes.
And if they don't find the auditors, then they're very much in danger of losing the short money. It's called short money, which the UK government gives to the party. It's £1.2 million. And that money is used to pay for staffing and for other costs, basically to be able to run their parliamentary party. So if they don't get that £1.2 million, then it's really going to cause them more cash flow problems. Any financial woes that they have at the moment are going to be, it's going to be much, much worse. Now, just in the last couple of hours, I've seen something from Magnus Llewellyn, who is the editor of The Times Scotland, and he's saying that Mike Russell, who was Peter Murrell's replacement, that he's sending out cold call emails to auditors, looking for auditors. Now, that's just not done. So they're getting pretty desperate, and Magnus says that they are standing on the brink of financial disaster.
Oh, really? Okay. Let's see if I can find that article. Just a second. It's in there. Oh, yes. S&P cold calls. Here we go. Here's the article here. S&P cold calls auditors as account deadline looms. Now, I read a thing actually, Robin McAlpine, which he was talking about that if they run out of money, they still have the branch money from the branches, about £1 million apparently they can use. But Robin McAlpine, of course, is a SNP commentator, nationalist commentator, and he's been very scathing. Written about 10 articles at least, all denigrating the SNP and what it's become. And he was doing that before this meltdown, so that's a plus on his side. None, but the minus side is that he still wants them to if things were cleaned up, he would still vote for them, not understanding that it's the nationalism that drives them that's causing all these problems in the first place. Anyway, he was asking, is there anyone actually in charge over there? Who's running it? The NEC isn't running it. Peter Murrow isn't running it. Mike Russell isn't running it. This other Sue Rudick isn't running it. There's no one going on there. And the SPADs and so on aren't even able to run it as well. They just seem to be all in a panic, like
headless chickens.
Like headless chickens, a full factory farm full of headless chickens, perhaps. Have you seen anything, Alan, about what you think about the state of how these crises are being handled?
Well, not much to add to what you said so far, but last week I saw a thing saying that 4 members of the Johnson Carmichael staff resigned last year.
Right.
And Johnson Carmichael, they're based in, got a lot of bases in Elgin, where Angus Robertson is and his wife and all that. And you just wonder what the connections are between Johnson and Carmichael and what somebody's found out when they'll be doing an audit, if it's to do with people that's involved with SNP, which is the impression I got. What's at the back of that,
Right. Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of insider dealing, as it were. I'm not saying there is, but I should say that there's some kind of strange things. For example, Angus Robertson has 30,000 that came out the short money.
Alan Jack has just brought that up.
Yeah, nobody knew about that. Exactly. So that's another thing that's coming out. So perhaps this is part of what's happening now. All this stuff is coming to the surface. We never heard about this before. Who told them that this 30,000 extra was there? And there's an indication that 30,000 was then let's put it away, a coincidence that Angus Robertson then did a £30,000 crowdfund not long after.
Someone's saying here, Alan Jack is also saying that one of those auditors who resigned was Mary Todd's husband.
Right.
That was it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was from Johnson Carmichael itself. It wasn't actually there was the auditors. Oh no, there were the people in the committee, the Treasury Committee or something in the SNP. They resigned first, and then you're saying that people actually inside the firm resigned.
Well, I can't remember the exact detail. This just came back in my head tonight, so I never looked it up before I came on this. I didn't want to say anything out of place, but certainly I read that 4 people resigned from Johnson Carmichael. I think it was at the end of last year or something, and it was in an article kind of around the topic of the SNP's audit. So I don't know what it was, but
right.
The other thing about that Angus Robertson 33k, which is usually somebody becomes a leader of a party, gets some more money from the party, but he got 33k. The other thing is I read that the SNP MPs and MSPs have been asked they mandatory have to give, I think it's 10% of their salary or 15% of their salary to the party, and they've been asked for more. And I'm thinking here, my taxes are paying for these guys to give the SNP funds for a party that I don't vote for. And as far as I'm aware, the other party,
I suppose it's a personal choice, isn't it? Though, really,
no, it's not. It's mandatory that they donate. Whereas the other parties, I did ask around a little bit. Other parties expect their MPs, MSPs, and councils even to put some money donation, but you're talking peanuts compared to that.
Right. Well, it's a part of the whole thing. It's like we're all in this together. We can't. We have to, financially support it as well as not tell any lies or not tell any truth outside our group as well. All right. Okay.
Well, I think that what's happened obviously in the SNP is that everything's just been like tightly held in. It's all been like under pressure.
Oh yes,
and now that cue the Queen song, and now that the lid has been taken off, that everything's just is exploding out. I think
it's a tsunami of bullshit, basically, corruption and lies, as that article that was written by the majority contributor, Robert, is actually very good. It goes through everything there and says the current state. Now, I noticed that some of the comments said that we should form our own party and fight. Now, that is very flattering. But our job really here
we've got 3 votes.
Yes, and that's great. Our job here is to push all of the parties to do better when it comes to fighting nationalism and to maintaining the integrity of the UK. And that's where we're at. And we try and do that as much as we can.
And we are very much a cross-party organisation.
That's right. And trying to become more and more cross-party as we go forward.
Really quick, Mark, I've just Googled that thing. John Todd, husband of SNP Minister Murray Todd, was a partner at SNP auditors Johnson Carmichael, but resigned shortly before the firm sacked the SNP as clients. So I'm reading here.
Oh, okay. It's all very curious. Certainly, it will come out in the wash. Undoubtedly, there are too many people involved in this thing. And I think it's what, as Mary says, it's a bit of a pressure cooker. And when that comes off, then the message is going to go everywhere. Really, that's the way it goes. We've all had pressure cooker accidents in the past, I think. So we can all identify with this metaphor. Anyway, coming up, Mary's going to be talking about membership number nonsense. Back in a second. A big thank you to all for coming to spend time with us on this Wednesday evening. Mary's going to talk about the membership numbers.
Yes. So a couple of days ago on April 24th, and I think that I'm mentioning the date in particular, there's a reason for this, Keith Brown told a radio station that the SNP membership had risen from over 72,000 at the start of March, midway through the SNP leadership contest, and it had now risen to 74,000, almost 74,900, a rise of over 2,700 members. He said, we've seen upticks in membership and we've seen upticks in donations. I thought, well, that's very weird. He said, we've lost members as well, but the balance is showing an increase in membership. And I find that quite hard to believe. But anyway, this is the same Keith Brown who says that the SNP has nothing to hide and the SNP are the most transparent party. So you can judge for yourselves whether you want to go with what Keith is saying or not. And it's the same SNP that denied newspaper reports when the newspapers had suggested that the SNP membership numbers were down by 30,000. They denied it. And then when it came to time for the leadership vote, they had to confirm that those figures were absolutely true. So Humza Yousaf has confirmed that he's seen the numbers and that they are correct. But I found the timing of this rather curious because on the very same day, have you got that, Mark?
Which one is that? Sorry.
The Herald Scotland.
The donors to
yes.
get refunds.
Yes.
Okay,
so
yes.
On the very same day, there was an article in the Herald from someone called James Gardner. He's a disaffected SNP member. He'd asked for his donation money back because he wasn't happy with the SNP's lack of progress on independence and the way they had treated Alex Salmond. And he says he had been paid back £480. And here he is, here he was then on the 24th of April in a major newspaper, and he was urging other members to ask for their money back too. Yes. So people started to talk a little bit. There was a little trickle of rumours about, is this going to be a run on the SNP funds? So I find it very curious that, both on the day that there's a major article about someone getting a refund and urging other people to go and get refunds as well, that the SNP came out with this, announcement that their membership was up. Because obviously if people are leaving, if there's less members and therefore there's less funds going in, then that is going to contribute also to the huge financial cash flow problem that the SNP are going to have.
Yes, indeed. Yes, very true. We seem to have lost Allan, by the way. He probably will come back up fairly soon.
Yeah, we'll just keep going. So did the SNP put this story out of the increased membership numbers just to try to quieten members' fears, to discourage them from stopping their memberships or asking for refunds? Now, I don't know either way, but I think it's worth thinking about. It's obviously very hard to trust them, isn't it?
Well, nobody really believes that the numbers went up. Can you imagine how that's even possible? They have hundreds of hi, Allan. Welcome to have you back there. We have this incredible I mean, even before Sturgeon resigned, we had 6 months of daily terrible headlines for the SNP, and how anyone could look at that and go, "Yeah, I'm going to give them my money." Oh, and not that. I mean, it's actually they've been stealing the ideas that they've been stealing.
Well,
Well,
maybe.
they say the
There's
criminal
accusations.
investigation is about that.
Yeah.
And the police have said that.
Well, they've been using. I mean, what's being alleged is that they were using members' funds. What we found out this week is that they were. What's being alleged this week is that they were using members' funds to go out and buy things like pots and pans and jewellery and a motorhome
and so on. Yeah. So I mean, looking at all that, I mean, how can you think?
Would you think? I'll give them some more money.
Yeah, I'll give them some more. Alan, do you think anyone's given the
and
SNP
expensive
any
pens
more money
as well?
Do I think it?
Yes.
I've got no idea, Mark. I mean, I think whether we've got another 2,000 similar members or not, does it really matter? I mean, their membership's gone down. Things are going badly for them. I just think the key thing is that if all these allegations or whatever they're investigating comes to light soon and gets investigated, that's the best thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they're making up numbers about additional members just to try and think they're going to impress people, I can't think who they're going to impress.
But what I was saying, Alan, I think that they've done it it's not to impress people, it's to stop people, it's to discourage people from stopping their memberships and asking to get their money back from previous donations. That's what the article in the paper was about, Jim Gardner. So he was urging people to do that. So it just happens that on the very same day, they come out and say, "Oh, actually, our membership numbers are up."
Yes, I mean, and they've no chance of getting any independence. Hamza Yousaf went down to London, and he, like Oliver Twist, he basically said, "Can I have a S30 order?" And apparently, it wasn't even the main point of the conversation. We just mentioned it in passing. And then just yesterday, we also heard this news that the so-called date of the referendum, October 19, 2023, was cancelled. So, I mean, who is going to put their money into a party that has one promise? That promise is to make Scotland independent if there's not even a possibility of a referendum. I mean, some people have also said, well, okay, it only costs £1 for a membership, so you can put £500 in or whatever. And other people, Craig Murray, actually, he said, well, they don't count all the people who have left, right, actually left and not paying their stuff. So they just keep them in the books. So who knows about that? Anyway.
I mean, there's no evidence. I mean, how would we know if the membership had increased or decreased or whatever? We have to rely on their word. And how good is their word these days?
Yes, the word isn't very good. Right, good segment there, Mary.
Well, actually, there was another point. I don't know if you wanted to go into it, but
sure.
There was another interesting thing that people have been kind of talking about this week. I don't know if they talked about it before or not, but during the SNP leadership contest, we were told that there were just over 72,000 members entitled to vote, but they'd sent out 78,000 ballots. And Hamza Yousaf won the leadership contest by 2,000 votes. So it makes you wonder, where did these extra ballots go to?
Mm-hmm.
So either those ballots, it's nearly 6,000 ballots, right?
Yes.
They were either sent to people who weren't members, or once again, we can't trust, what they're telling us about the numbers.
Yes.
Either
I think
way,
it's not. I mean, I think
shady.
what Alan says is almost right in a way. It's like, okay, we can. Does it really matter? Because there, 70,000 people, 100,000 people on a dead end journey anyway. That's not really. It's okay. What are we going to do about that? Which I think is the second. We're going to talk about Alan's efforts in this next part here. We'll be back in just a second. Right, Alan, we're going to talk to you about your activities lately, and what have you been up to?
Well, we've been having a bit of a think about what we should be doing, and personally, I write a lot of letters to the paper, as you know. I've never written, I think this year, I've never written a single letter about anti-independence, because as far as I'm concerned, independence is dead. And what we need to do is get a government installed. There's not an SNP government that's going to try and fix Scotland. And, as far as I'm concerned, the SNP is tanking, and that's going to take its course. But the other thing about for the SNP that's going wrongly is the usual big sticks they've got: Boris Johnson, Brexit, Liz Truss. They don't exist anymore, so there's nothing really to beat the UK with. The big thing, and then all the other issues, the opposition are handling well, such as the ferries, NHS queues, education going down, the deposit return scheme. The opposition parties are very good, I think, at knocking the SNP about that. So they don't have a stick to beat the SNP, the UK with. They're getting hammered on these normal issues. But there's some bigger things that are going on here that should be people should be thinking about. And there was, I don't know if you got that image I sent you. There's 2 articles in the Courier today, one by Jim Spence,
yes,
and one by Kevin Pringle.
Yes.
Basically, admit what I'm just saying here, the SNP for the time being are on a real slide, but there's nobody on the horizon that's going to take over them, is capable of taking over them. And to me, that's the issue just now. And without beating the opposition over the head, because I wouldn't want to be doing their job just now. You know, I think they're going to have to start finding policies and coming out with why people should be voting for them, not just waiting on SNP tanking and, you know, Labour voters going back to Labour, the Conservatives picking up a few more seats. It'd be good if they came out with some actual vision. And what we've been looking at is where are the big stories that's going to get a lot of voters. And the last time I was talking about the gender reform bill. So that's still, I mean, Rishi Sunak came out last week or this week to say, I'm right behind safe places for women. A very comprehensive statement. Even people that can't stand Rishi Sunak are agreeing that he's done the right thing. And what I'm hoping is the Scottish parties will take their cue from that and say, we're also against this gender recognition bill and we're in support of women's spaces. At the moment, it's only really the Tories that are saying that. Another one that's coming up that we've been quite heavily involved with is one that Glasgow Cabby was very vocal on and did a lot. He's had a lot of problems lately with his Facebook page. You guys did it. The Family Party did it. It's becoming more mainstream. And there's an organisation called the Scottish Union for Education, who a lot of the same people that are in the For Women Scotland group, they've been doing public meetings and they're getting very active. And I was at one of them 2 Wednesdays ago in Dundee, and Jim Sillars was speaking at it. And I think a lot of people need to read. There's a thing called the RHSP website, which I think you know about, the content that the schools go to. There's some absolutely amazingly worrying stuff on there. So they were talking about that, but Jim Sillars did a talk about widening it out to, you know, if Scottish education is getting monopolised by all this stuff and the quality, the actual education go down as well, this country's going to fall behind the Eastern nations. And he didn't even mention Russia and China. He was talking about, to give the example of Vietnam, somebody who knows who's been working in Vietnam, who said if the Scottish schools education and the people that are the product of it were put up against Vietnamese kids, the Vietnamese kids would wipe the floor with it. And I know a lot of people, and you'll know as well, that have got kids at school or teachers who are really concerned about this. And if you add it up, there's about 780,000 kids at school, 50,000 teachers in schools, maybe about 80,000 staff in all. That must represent about 1 million parents, grandparents, and teachers that are voters. And what I'd like to put to the political parties is get behind this and get these people, some of whom don't even vote just now, but are annoyed and worried about all this stuff, to vote for you and start winning these elections. And that's kind of the main thing we've been...
For too long, the Nationalists have been able to have the narrative that they alone are responsible for making Scotland better. And it's if you're nationalist, so you must want Scotland to be better. They're kind of smug and self-satisfied about that. It's just enough for them to do that. Of course, I want Scotland to be better. I vote for the SNP and I want independence to make it even better. Now we've had 14 years of this, and we see, well, what a disaster has been. And you say, well, actually, that's not the case. What we need to make Scotland better. This was a disaster all round. And you look at this with education, look at this the way the Greens are pushing these policies onto our kids and onto just in the deposit return scheme as well, just the same thing, and just say, well, no, we're not doing it any better. But the question I think you have is the thing is, how can the opposition parties take more advantage of that?
Well, they've got a leverage from it, and if you look at, the main reason until the police thing came really to the fore, that Sturgeon, everybody thought Sturgeon resigned, I think it's a lot to do with it, was her total wipeout in that gender bill.
Yes.
And that gender bill, okay, the Tories mostly voted against it, everybody else voted for it, but the people that made that happen was the For Women Scotland demo, and subsequent to the demo, this thing about the Isla Bryson, that all came out from people involved in there. And that then got Rishi Sunak's eye and people across the UK's eye. It was on the national TV. Now, that's one campaign. The school thing is the same thing, the school sex education stuff. And I was just
Alan, can you tell us the name of that site again? Someone's asking what's the name of the
RH, if you look at, if you just Google RHSP.
RHSP, right.
Yeah. Google that and you'll see, and look at the content. Some of it is unbelievable. Some of it is absolutely spot on that's required. There's no doubt about that, but some of it is very worrying. And at that meeting I was at in Dundee, there was a contingent of Muslims there. There was a trans guy who's now a woman who's wanted to detransition, talking about his issues and all the rest of it. People are worried about this thing. And my point is that these campaigns, and there's other campaigns going on as well, that I think should be leveraged by the political parties and we're the guys that are going to stop the sex education. I think there's votes in that, as well as they've got to have policies in education, industry, etc. And the Tories have got their conference this weekend, and I'm hoping that some of that will come out there in terms of what they need to do about winning an election.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's the thing that you've been saying since we first met.
Yeah.
Basically, that this is all well and good, but how do you need to win elections?
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? And you need to get the people behind them. We see the Tories, we'll talk about this a little bit later, they always seem to be against the Tory party in Scotland, seems to be against the grassroots Tories. And, I wonder if the same thing happens in the Labour Party as well. Certainly there's a disconnect anyway between... There's a huge disconnect between what the Scottish Parliament is doing and what Scottish people want. But there's also a big disconnect between what voters want in each party, I think, and then to make changes there. And I suppose it's our job, as we mentioned earlier, when people said we should form your own party, which is it's an intriguing idea. But it's if we can get the parties that already exist, they have the power already, have the connections, they have all that infrastructure together to build things, so we can really push and get them to do
and I think
the voters are really interested in.
And I think that's much more important than worrying too much about this. This investigation is going to take its own course. And you asked what we've been up to. One of the things that we started doing is leafleting, just basic door-to-door leafleting. We did one at the Bridge of Allan council by-election, one in Aberdeen, and both times the SNP got beat by Labour or the Tories. And I'm not claiming that just because we were doing that they won it, but these efforts help. And we're just doing a one just now. Campaign is called "Coming to a Door."
Just add that one up.
A letterbox near you. A leafleting campaign.
Right.
So we're also doing some crowdfunding if people are interested. They can go to our website, and any donations help.
Yes,
don't give us money we're going to give to the majority. That wouldn't be fair. But
no, we could. Well, hopefully there are people out there who are quite happy to donate.
Sure, there are people who support both of us.
Donate both. And if we are fine with all that. Of course, you can donate to whatever you can. Talking of donations, maybe this isn't a good time to talk about our donation thing, but instead of donation, you can buy a nice Abolish Holyrood t-shirt. A little bit of the money from each one comes to us, and we've got a whole range of things now. Someone bought a mouse mat yesterday, and the Abolish Holyrood mug, and so on. That's a great section. Thank you for your efforts, Alan. We're going to move on now. Next up is going to talk about should Holyrood's powers be rolled back. Now, I bet many of you have got something to say about this, and I certainly have as well. So we'll be back in a second.
Okay, goodbye, mate.
Right. Okay. Probably this is. I don't. It's not in my thing here. So we'll get in a second. Right. Okay. So.
Well, last week, Lord Frost.
Yes, I've got it.
wrote-
Maybe. It's all right.
Have you got it? Yeah.
Yes. Last week, Lord Frost wrote an article in the Telegraph, headlining saying that devolution was had been used as a vehicle for separation, and now that nationalists are in decline, it was time to maybe fight back. Oh my God! Fighting back. What an idea. What a shocker. Anyway, so he said, in particular, Scotland does not need to be an independent actor on the world stage. It should not be able to legislate to disrupt free trade within the UK, and it does not need to have most tax-raising powers currently available to it. These powers are embryonic, independent government powers. They aren't necessary to run an effective local administration, which is what devolution should be about. Now, that's exactly what it should be about. And I think we're at the stage now where many of us are looking at the state of the SNP. We are seeing a weakness here. And we're saying, okay, well, maybe we can do something about this, because now we've had 25 years of the devolution. And what is it working for us? This is the big question. Is it working for the majority of Scots? Is it working for, it might have been working for nationalists to gain power and use the power of the state to pursue their agenda, but that's not working for the majority of Scots. Never has been. The nationalists have never had a majority of Scots on their side. So it's time to start saying, well, okay, it's been abused by nationalists. We have this tax system that is killing inward investment to Scotland and promoting a brain drain out of Scotland. And it's been run for the past 8 years by a party that's not interested in it at all. I mean, and so we've had nationalists now. Said this, and nationalists started crying, crocodile tears, saying, talking about power grabs and so on. But what's worse is the Scottish Tories themselves and Labour MSPs, who see the complete disaster that this is in front of them, are just going on saying, oh, this is great, devolution should continue. And, for example, Murdo Fraser said, the comments were nonsense, adding, devolution has allowed us to shine a light on SNP failures. Well, I must have missed that bit. Right, I just must have missed that bit. Shine a light on it. It's not shining a light. You have to have actual action.
Whatever they must be using a 5-watt bulb. The light that they're shining on it.
It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like that's why we should keep devolution, because it shines a light in SNP failures. Well, they're still there in power. They're still pushing forward these nonsense, ridiculous things. It doesn't matter if you put a 5-watt bulb on Lorna Slater. It's still rubbish. Doesn't change the fact how it is. Anyway, I think the truth is that nobody actually really wants devolution, and we've got a lot of this lip service to it. The Tories don't want it, and they shouldn't want it after seeing constitutional damage is done. In fact, the only polling done on this issue was done in 2021. And said 60% of Tories don't want it. And that number is surely much higher now. In fact, we did a wee poll on it of our followers. Okay, fair enough. It's our followers. Here we go. This is abolish Holyrood. 93.3%. In fact, that is up from 89% when we first did one of these. Probably about a year ago. So the Tories don't want it, and then the SNP don't want it because they have no incentive to make it better. They just want to. Why would they make devolution better? Then people just say, well, devolution works, right? And then Labour don't want it because they want to put it down to devolution further down to local authorities. Alan, you anything to say on this?
Well, if I voted for devolution, I wouldn't vote for it now. And whether I think that Holyrood should be closed or not, there's an argument for closing it. It's not going to happen. So I had a letter in 3 papers, in the lead letter in the Herald, it was in the Scotsman yesterday, it was in the Press and Journal today. If you take away some of the examples that this Lord Frost gave and look at the need for a drains up, some kind of royal commission on Holyrood, how to make it better, because there's 2 things. One is you could look at it from the time when the SNP came in, or you could also look at it from 1999. And from 1999, it's been pretty underwhelming. And that's why the SNP got in the first place, because Labour and Lib Dems, it was pretty mundane stuff they were doing. So, to my mind, I think the realistic thing is to get some party to come out and say, if we get elected, we're going to have a really drains-up look at this, get some independent people in here and tell us how to improve it. Because there's nobody in the UK, and I dispute what you're saying about people don't want devolution. People like us might not want devolution, but there's 1 million or 2 million people out here couldn't even tell you that we've got devolution.
Yes, well, I know, but so we have to reach out. So I think this is an important point here. I said, for example, that in the last polling that was done, that most Tories don't want it anyway, and that's a fairly settled view. But only 23% of Labour people want to abolish at the time. But the thing is, this is the thing that I'm interested in. It's not saying, okay, let's abolish Holyrood. I'm actually saying, let's have a question about all the levels of reform, and one of those pieces could be that getting rid of it and replacing it, because we don't actually have a discussion of what even could replace it. So we say, okay, if you say to someone straight up, right, I'm going to abolish Holyrood, they'll go, oh, Westminster, going to be Westminster rule, and well, no, maybe it's the 50 Scottish SNPs meet once a quarter to decide how the money is spent, but there's no rule making, there's no law making, because we've seen how a disaster all these laws are. That's just one example, but there are a million different possibilities, and I think your idea of a royal commission or a commission on it is one strong possibility. But here's the thing: I think that for you say that it's not going to happen, but what if people were made aware of how much more education into the problems that's happened? And I'm talking particularly about Labour people, because Labour people are the ones who have to be convinced in this. What if you said, okay, well, this over the next 10 years, this is going to cost us £10 billion. That's it's 10 hospitals. That's thousands of nurse jobs. That's money for investment in transport, infrastructure, and for your pet projects, not for a bunch of nationalists at some point.
SNP and Green pet projects,
right? Exactly. So that's, I think, there's two aspects to it. One is there's a lot, a whole education process needs to be done, and just say it. I think it's just saying outright we want to abolish it. It's like, okay, that's shock value. Okay, yeah, here we are. Oh, okay, why are you saying that? And I think that's what Lord Frost kind of is saying. Let's wake up a little bit and start considering things. But we should have all options on the table. We should say, all right, okay, we can reform taxation, or we can taxation's causing trouble. No pretend embassies. But I think a lot of people might just go, well, really, well, what's the point if they know more about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if there was going to be some inquiry, the big thing is agreeing the scope of it. What actually is it going to look into, first of all, and then what they're going to come out with at the end of the day, and how's it going to be enacted? Because you'd have to have all the parties accepting the result of it, and who are you going to put on the commission? All that kind of thing needs to come out. So it's way in the future, but there's nobody even saying it. There's not one party at the moment saying we're going to look at Holyrood and reform it where it needs reforming. I mean, it could actually be that, as it stands, it would work fine if I had 129 brilliant politicians working in Holyrood, for example. And
this is the question we've posed to some people during the week: is okay, would you rather have 129 politicians in the Scottish Parliament, or would you rather have 300 nurses? And that when you put it in terms like that, people might go, "Well, wait a minute. I'd rather have nurses, perhaps."
I think you'd get a lot more nurses than that, Mark.
Well, perhaps. Anyway, certainly that's the case. So
I think the point is that it's been 25 years, and that seems like a good time.
Exactly.
If it wasn't done before, you would think that 25 years. In business, whenever you implement something, you always, after a period of time, or in anything, engineering or whatever, you always have to go looking back and say, is this working? Is it working for us? Is it working as well as it could be?
Yeah,
and I think you can't actually I think to some extent, you can't get people interested in reform unless their jobs are at risk. And if you're actually saying to them, well, look, we just want to get rid of your jobs, then you can do that. And just as an example, think we don't have members of the European Parliament in the UK anymore, because a concerted programme was built up to to educate and remove people, to educate people to the point where the referendum is won to remove them. So it's not impossible, but it does require a long-term effort, even just to get reform. And we'll be talking a lot more about that as we go forward. We have an article series, almost a report coming out at the weekend, which goes into a lot of the history of devolution, what can be done. The various options are coming out from that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so that, that's part of it. I think it needs to be something that we actually discuss in a forthright manner and say, well, okay, right, maybe abolish doesn't work, but maybe we can actually do substantial reforms to make this thing work. But
a serious review is what is needed.
At the very minimum. All right, coming up. Oh, no, we don't do that bit yet. We do this part yet. We do things you can do to support the majority. Show. You can make a donation to us. Everything helps. This is a great time to donate. We are in the middle of doing a lot of work for you. For example, an article was out today. We've got this huge thing coming out on devolution. We have the show.
We've actually got something coming up on Alan's topic about the sex in schools and the way it's being taught, but that'll be a future show coming up soon.
Yes, we'll get that as well. We'll get some interviews, good interviews planned. So a lot going on. It really helps if you can donate to us or buy a t-shirt, whatever it is. Anyway, you can bung us a wee bit of cash that keeps us going through these trying times. Right, so that was that. You can also, of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, and that really, really helps. Tell your friends about us and so on. Coming up, it is the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the week. Right, okay, so it's me starting. My Zoomer is Ian Blackford, perennial choice, told the BBC that he'd been given assurances by Stephen Flynn earlier in the month that the Westminster Group had a new auditor in the place. He's apparently phoned on 7th of April, but no auditor has been appointed. He's said to be angry, according to the BBC, because he assured the media the party will be able to meet its obligations. And a senior SNP source said a discussion had taken place, but no assurance was provided that this would be certain would meet deadlines. I mean, however, Mr. Flynn has denied this was the case, and nobody knows who's telling the truth. And this isn't a good situation for any party to be in, where they're starting to fight amongst themselves. Some might say, like rats in a sack. But Blackford added to his troubles by griping. A reporter shouldn't even be asking these questions. What have we got this here? Tantrum describes a tantrum. Now, I actually looked up in Google Ian Blackford tantrum. There's quite a few examples. So, where is it? Okay, here it is. This is from The Spectator. Ian Blackford tantrum over SNP auditor inquiries. And he basically said, I think the question is awful. And let's leave it at that. I'm not responsible for the appointment of the auditor, and I shouldn't even need to explain that to you. What did happen in this matter of record is that there was a full handover of all the information to the new team when I was no longer leader. I didn't pass any information on because that wouldn't be my job responsibility. Sorry. Your question is insulting, quite frankly. How dare you? How dare you? So, rattled, rattled. And, I think how many of them are going to just say this? I've had enough of this nonsense. This is ridiculous. So, coming up, I don't know. It's anyways for his continual blowhardiness. Then I think has to be Blackford. Do you know anything about this story, Alan?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I just think what I'm hoping is that there's a new Lib Dem candidate up in Blackford's constituency. He's a well-known businessman up there that he does work for the community. I'm just hoping when there's an election, he gets Blackford out of there. He'll forever make all these kind of statements and just deny the truth of a situation. It's unbelievable the way he does it. But
yes.
Again, he needs to be voted out.
Right. Well, that's very true. And if you are up there watching the show, please do so. That's our instruction to you. All right. Next up, I think you should just get it every so often, Blackford.
Well, anyway. He was on last week too, so it seems to be quite often these days.
What was last week's?
I had suggested Ian Blackford last week.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we'll have to load that back up on the catch-up. All right. Next up is going to be Got clicked up a bit fast, but anyway, okay.
My nomination for Zoomer of the Week is Kelly Given. She is the SNP supporter that we recently saw in New York with Angus Robertson. She was in all the photos. But she is my Zoomer of the Week for her ridiculously laughable assertions that the SNP are the most open and transparent party because Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrow have police tents up outside their house and people camped out in their garden. And I mean, how could you get any more transparent than that?
Well, let's watch the actual clip.
I think actually I massively disagree with that statement. I think the SNP are forced as well to be the most transparent because we are held to such a higher standard. The Tories get away with murder, they get away with anything, and it's like they're not held accountable in public ever. It's like they don't take any accountability. There's hardly any scrutiny on them. I mean, we've had a forensic tent in the ex-First Minister's garden on full view for everyone. We've got people camping outside her house to video her leaving her house. Like, that is transparency. What else do you possibly want? The SNP have been very clear that they will cooperate, that they have cooperated on every single issue. We've always cooperated with any sort of scandal that's come up. I don't see how we could be more transparent. We've started an internal governance review. What else could the SNP really do to be more transparent?
Well, perhaps not have a police investigation might be one of the reasons why you might want to be would be, a start.
I love the bit. It's like, what more could you want? We've got tents up in the garden. We've got police camped out. We've got, hordes of police rummaging through, tea bags and biscuits and everything looking for. I mean, what more could you want? But I thought it was funny was sitting next to poor Ewan Blockley, the former Conservative councillor. He's a great guy and a friend of the majority, and he had to sit there and try not to laugh.
There's hardly any scrutiny on them. I mean, we've had a forensic tent in the ex-First Minister's garden on full view for everyone. We've got people camping outside her.
Whatever, I think this is, it doesn't matter what any other one. This is a Zoomer of the century. This one is definitely.
That makes them transparent. Yeah.
She's the one, isn't she, the gravy bus?
Yeah, she was just been in New York, as I said, with Angus Robertson.
Yeah, but she was the one
who she invented the gravy bus, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the gravy bus.
It's just why? It's just, you think, why? How is this even possible? What is this level? What's this kind of Diane Abbott level of absolute nonsense?
Absurdity.
Yeah, it really is. A farce, a tragedy, and a disaster, really. Alan, I'm going to have a wee chat with you next about yours.
Well,
hold on.
I had two.
Yeah, we've got to do your titles first, right? Okay.
Right, okay. Yeah, I had two contenders, and one of them can't do it because of the topic that Mary's just picked. But Ian, what's the name? Keith Brown was on. He's my. I need to mention this. Keith Brown was on saying the same thing. We're the most transparent party in Scotland. He said that on BBC Scotland on Sunday. And I had a letter in the paper, and there was another guy who wrote the same letter, a guy called Ian Lewis, the same letter in the Scotsman today as I had in the Express. Of course, we've got the most transparent. They're the most transparent party in Scotland because everybody can see through them. No.
Right. Okay, yes.
So quite chuffed with that one. I thought that on the show yesterday morning. And the other, but my winner is really Ross Greer. He was on BBC Scotland on Sunday, trying to pitch the blame for the deposit return scheme on the British government because they never gave them permission and they'd applied for permission, and they've never ever come up with proof of permission. They also had a wall of issues and complaints about this thing since day one, all to do with their incompetence and their hubris and arrogance that they know better than anybody else.
Yes.
And they're trying to blame the UK government. I mean, I don't normally say this about people, but that guy's a total idiot.
Okay, don't hold back.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, really,
okay.
21.
Yes.
We absolutely agree.
Yes. Well, the problem is that it's not that. I actually don't think. I mean, of course, he's an idiot. But the problem is the people who voted him in. That's the actual problem.
Well, the phrase when I was a kid,
as they say, if you vote in clowns, expect a circus.
Well, when I was a kid, anybody like that turned up in where I lived or in work or whatever it was, and say, "Where did they get these people from?
Yeah,
You know,
that's
where
right.
did they come from? The Slater, Ross Greer, Harvey,
Patrick Harvey, yeah.
and what's the other one? Woman from Aberdeen,
Chapman, Maggie Chapman.
Maggie Chapman. For God's sake!
Terrible, terrible. But they've been allowed in because of the vagaries of this system. Alan, you are actually, it's your choice. You can choose between the three you have: Kelly, Givens, Blackford, and your own choice you can choose as well.
Well, I think Kelly Givens. I've seen her on a few of these debate nights.
Yes.
I mean, I've got to agree. I mean, she's just got to open her mouth and she's going to win some Zoomer prize, isn't she?
Yes.
She's very much on a par. Who's that other one, Mark? The currency?
Oh, Emma Harper.
Emma Harper.
Oh,
Emma
Yes.
and Kelly should
it's
get together.
entertaining, but you know
That
what?
could be a great
We'd
show.
rather have. We'd rather have competence than entertainment, to be honest.
It's
You know,
Kelly
it's like-
the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, definitely.
As in
Oh,
Kelly
dear
Givens.
God.
It's a pun there, but it's okay.
Very good. Right. Okay. So, well, thank you all for being on the show with us tonight. A huge thank you to Alan for coming here.
Thanks for having me.
And spending your time and giving us your opinions and telling us what Scotland Matters is doing. Please do support them in their campaigns. And they have some meetings coming up. Go to the website, scotlandmatters.com, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will leave you with Thought of the Week. As the social anthropologist Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. Now, a small group of committed, maybe not so thoughtful, nationalists was able to destroy Scotland over the past 14 years. Now it's time for a large group of anti-nationalists to make Scotland better. That means me, you, all of us, Alan's group, everyone. Because that's what the thing. It's a lie that only nationalists care about Scotland. Let's make Scotland better by getting rid of nationalism and reforming, or at the very minimum, reforming Holyrood. It's our turn now. We're so happy to have you with us on the show every week. Tune in next Wednesday, 7 p.m, live for more discussion. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks so much.
See you next week.
Thank you all.
Thank you.